Hello, everyone, and thank you for coming to today's Play Attention webinar. My name is Gwen Sorley, and I'll be your host today. I really do appreciate you taking out some time today as we're going to talk about holiday hacks for ADHD, how to strengthen focus and joy this season. So let's go ahead and set the stage. Can any of you relate to this woman on the screen? So, if you are here in the United States, and I know many of you are outside the United States if you're here today, but for us in the United States, we know that Thanksgiving dinner is exactly 1 week away. And if you can relate to this woman, you know that sometimes you can plan a great holiday meal. You think you have everything prepared, but on Thanksgiving Day, when there are so many distractions, there are so many kids running around, people coming in and out, there's the dog running around, and you find that suddenly your plan is falling apart. Your cook times aren't really working out the way you thought they would. Some things are overcooked, some things are undercooked. Some food items you completely forget about, and they never even make it to the holiday table. Can any of you relate to this? I'm sure many of you can, because when we get into this holiday season, the holidays tend to stretch executive function to its limits. So if you could just think about that right now and type in the chat box, how do the holidays stretch your executive function to its limits? What have you experienced? And as you type them in, I'll share some of your experiences because I think it's important that we share what other people are going through realistically. Because right now, if you're watching the Hallmark Channel, and you see all these picture perfect holidays, we know that's not the reality, right? What is the reality? How do the holidays stretch your executive function? And this may be yourself, or it may be your child or your partner. Go ahead and type those in. It might be related to the demands of last minute shopping or navigating crowded spaces. It might be managing constant interruptions, or maybe coping with sudden changes in the routine. All of these can really make the day to day more challenging. Gwenna says working hard on holiday projects till late at night and not getting enough sleep then it spirals from there. That's a really good point because not enough sleep is really going to again negatively affect executive function. So not only do you have all these other things that are going on, but lack of sleep is going to make it much more challenging to maneuver. Joya says there's the stress of money constraints. And so that can be very stressful. Alana says her children seem to be on high alert and high energy all the time. So lots of energy going on. Michael says he has a hard time keeping up with the day to day and remembering what he's supposed to do every day and where he's supposed to be. All right. So you know that in good times, in the regular day to day, it can be challenging with ADHD or weak executive function to keep up, but the holidays really do amplify those challenges. So today we're going to talk about how holiday hacks, what you can do to not only just survive the holidays, but actually thrive. And I think before we look at the holiday hacks, it's important we first talk about the why. Once we can clearly identify why this time of year is so challenging, then we can actually make a plan and take steps to improve this time of year and improve our experience and our family's experience. It's not just that the holidays are busy. They actually create an environment that challenges our brains in unique ways. Let's look at these different challenges. First, there's sensory overload. So, blinking lights, lots of noise, loud music, Crowded environments, the general hustle and bustle of this time of year can really overwhelm the ADHD brain. And so for kids, this can result in meltdowns or hyperactivity. For adults, this can lead to irritability, zoning out, or just feeling completely drained by the end of the day. And that's due to sensory overload. If you think about ADHD, it's not really an attention deficit, is it? It's actually that you have great attention. The challenge is you're paying attention to bits and pieces of everything. So you are taking in absolutely everything around you. So this leads to that sensory overload. So it's important to keep that in mind. Impulsive spending. You may find that this is a challenge for you. Remember, impulse control is a part of executive function. It's just one of those mental processes within executive function. And if you're impulsively spending, you might do this because you want to get the perfect gift, or you get that last minute gift idea and you end up spending a little bit more on it than you had initially planned. Or maybe you are trying to make everything so magical. And so you overspend, you go a little bit beyond your regular budget. A real true hurdle is also managing expectations. You might have a hard time managing expectations on a daily basis, but when the holidays come around, there's a lot of holiday shoulds, right? You should make all of your cookies from scratch. You should attend every single holiday event you're invited to. You should be able to make everything picture perfect. Not really, but sometimes those expectations, we have those in our head. And trying to really juggle the holiday expectations with weak time management or planning skills can lead to guilt or frustration or just general burnout. Then we have staying organized. Staying organized may be a challenge right now. Just being able to organize your home or your calendar may be challenging. But now you have all of the holiday events on your calendar. So you have to keep up with the regular work events and school events, but also now you have lots of holiday events to add into that. You have to remember gifts. Which gifts did you already purchase? Which gifts do you need to purchase? Who is missing on your gift list? So you have to keep up with all of that and managing the chaos of a cluttered home. Maybe usually your home is a little cluttered, but now you might have gifts on the table. You have extra food in the house for dinner parties. You may have a tree in the middle of your living room. There's a lot more stuff in the house, which can cause a cluttered home. And ADHD can make it feel like you're constantly trying to catch up. Finally, there's emotion regulation. When we're talking to clients about executive function, I would say that this is the number one challenge that comes up when it comes to both children and adults when we're discussing the areas of executive function. Emotion regulation is difficult. And during the holidays, they often bring heightened emotions, both good and bad. You may find that there's a lot of excitement, and that may cause some challenges with emotion regulation, right? Too much excitement for your child may lead to some difficulties. But also, there's frustration, there's disappointment. And if you have ADHD or weak executive function, these emotions come out very big. And so it's difficult to regulate those emotions during the holiday time when there are so many emotions that come into play. Now, as we look at the why and we looked at all of the challenges that come along with weak executive function during this holiday time, it may make the holidays seem a bit daunting. So it's important that we keep in mind that the holidays don't have to be perfect to be meaningful. I think you really need to read that in the message again. The holidays don't need to be perfect in order to be meaningful. Okay. And that's one of the challenges of ADHD because perfectionism and ADHD often go hand in hand. So it's really important when we're talking about managing expectations, you keep that in mind. And by understanding the struggles, we can create realistic strategies to navigate this season. So that's what we're going to talk about now. Tips and strategies, practical tips and strategies that you can use for a smoother holiday season. So you may want to just have, something to jot down some notes, or, you can type them up or maybe put them on your phone, because I would like you to set a goal and maybe walk away with one or two things, one or two strategies, new strategies, or they might be strategies that you tried in the past that you felt didn't really work too well. Maybe you'll try them again, but let's have two takeaways from today, two things that you're going to try. If there's more, great, but don't overwhelm yourself, right? Set those expectations realistically. What are your two takeaways going to be? What are you going to incorporate this season? So, first of all, let's talk about our to do list. Okay. Um, our to do list and being able to plan and organize. So, we know that ADHD, if you have ADHD, I should say, planning and organizing can be really challenging. So, let's take it step by step and talk about how to break down tasks into smaller, bite sized steps. Okay. First, start with a master list. Okay. So when you start with your master list, and you can have a big sheet of paper or you can put it on your computer, but write down everything you'd like to accomplish during the holidays: shopping, decorating, events, absolutely everything that comes to mind. And you can do this as a family if you'd like. Just get all of your ideas down, all of the things you want to accomplish on one master list. Once we can see it visually, now we can see everything that we want to achieve. Then let's start to prioritize. Before I prioritize, what I like to do is cross off everything that I absolutely do not want to do or don't need to do, right? So you're going to have extra things on that master list that maybe you can sacrifice. So really look at it objectively and let go of a couple of things. That might be your goal, is to just let go of a couple of things that really don't need to be on your list. Then once we do that, we clear out the list, start prioritizing by urgency and importance. So think about what needs to happen this week and what can wait until later. Use digital tools to help you, like shared calendars or task apps, to keep everyone in the loop and reduce last minute surprises. So remember, again, we talked about that perfectionism. Perfectionism isn't the goal. Focus on what matters most to you and your family and let go of the rest. So that goes back to that master list. Let go of some of the things that really are not a priority for you and your family. Emotion regulation. We talked about how the holidays bring heightened emotions, and the emotions can really vary. You can be really excited, really happy, but there's also a lot of frustration. There may be some disappointment. There are lots of family dynamics going around, and there may also be some sadness. So be prepared for all of those emotions for both yourself, your partner, your child. Keep that in mind when you're making a plan. So here are some steps you can take. This first one was on my list of what I'm going to incorporate this holiday season because it's simple to do, and you can teach your child how to use this as well. When you feel yourself becoming overwhelmed, try the stop technique. Okay. So S is just stop, right? So you're starting to feel overwhelmed. Now you can stop. If you're doing this with your child or even your partner or a friend that has a hard time with emotion regulation, you might be observing the fact that they're getting overwhelmed before they recognize it. So you could just use the word stop to kind of get them to remember to use this method, right? So stop. S, stop. T, take a deep breath. O, observe your surroundings and feelings. And then P, now proceed with intention. Because sometimes with those emotions, that impulse control becomes challenged, right? We talked about impulsivity being part of executive function, or impulse control is part of executive function. And it's difficult to control that impulsive nature and just impulsively respond with the first emotion that comes to mind. So when you you start feeling that overwhelming feeling, then stop. Take a deep breath. Observe your surroundings and feelings. You're giving yourself time to process the information and then proceed. Also, plan ahead for family dynamics. This is going to happen for many of you. If certain conversations or situations tend to push your buttons, think about how you're going to respond ahead of time. Have your plan. This is not your first rodeo. You know how a lot of these family dynamics are going to go. So plan ahead. What are you going to do? How are you going to respond? And this is really important to talk about with your entire family. I have a friend who her son has ADHD. She also has ADHD. He's an adult now, but I remember when he was a child and uh, he had a difficult time during the holidays, lots of hyperactivity and lots of big emotions. And the grandfather had a really hard time dealing with that. And so it became very negative family dynamic. And so she knew this. And so she made a plan ahead of time. They had a special spot in the house all the time, no matter where they were, whether it was their home, friend's home, or the grandfather's home, they had a special spot that was their spot. And when things got a little bit too much, a little bit overwhelming, then they would go to that spot and they would have something to play, or they would chat, or they had some activity they would do together. But that area where they could just step back and that family dynamic didn't get out of control was a really good way to navigate the holidays. And finally, give yourself grace. It's okay to feel a range of emotions. You shouldn't feel guilty about your feelings. It's part of being human. Self-care and mindfulness. You want to remember self-care and mindfulness because often these go on the back burner. But it's important to keep these in your routine because it's going to help you stay balanced. And the more you're balanced, right, the more self-care you have, then it's going to be easier for you to control those emotions and to put all of your plans into place. So, in order to do this, build short, intentional self care moments into your day. And these can be little, they don't have to be big. So, it could just be a 5-minute breath exercise, or it could be just stretching, or just step outside and get a little bit of fresh air. It may be just taking a walk, maybe even just walking around the block or walking around your house. It's okay. Just take that moment for a little bit of a break. Try this mindfulness exercise. This is also on my list that I'm personally going to incorporate. And I think, again, this is great to teach to your children. It's the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 grounding exercise. So name 5 things you see, 4 things you hear, 3 things you can touch, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. Right in your environment, you're doing some environmental mindfulness with 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and all of your senses. What do you see? What do you hear? What do you touch? What can you smell? What can you taste? Okay. And so that I think is a really good idea to incorporate if you have a child who has a hard time with transitions. Okay. Transitioning from you're at home, you're doing an activity, or maybe they're playing a video game. Now you know you have to transition to get into the car to go to the next holiday event. And you know that transition is going to be difficult. So take a moment just before you ask them to transition and do Name 5 things you see. Name 4 things you hear. 3 things you can touch. 2 things you can smell. 1 thing you can taste. Transition. Okay. So lots of different ways you can use that. And don't skip the basics. Uh, I think Gwenna brought this up, and it's really important to get enough sleep, like she mentioned. Stay hydrated. You might notice at the end of the day, you haven't had any water all day long. You've just been having a variety of coffee drinks or fruit drinks or sodas. So make certain that you're getting plenty of water and staying hydrated and eat balanced meals. Also, exercise. Keep your exercise routine in place. So make that a priority. Family engagement. Foster meaningful family engagement. Now, you might be saying, well, all of these activities engage my family. But here, I mean family engagement that is low stress and low key. Plan those, put those into your master list. So have a low key family night where everyone wears pajamas. Maybe you all get into your pajamas at dinner time and you drink hot cocoa or watch a family movie. Make that one of your priorities. Have one night set aside, or maybe one night a week, where you're just doing nothing but spending time together. Create simple holiday crafts together, like decorating cookies or making ornaments, or start a tradition that is easy to keep up with. So maybe you make a plan where everyone writes down one thing they're grateful for that day. And you write that down, maybe the entire holiday season, you just write down one thing. And then at the end of the season, everyone shares what they wrote down throughout the season. The goal here is connection, not perfection. These moments can be as simple or as elaborate as your family energy allows, but I recommend keeping it simple. There's going to be lots of time for other elaborate plans. Setting boundaries. This can be the most important part of the holiday season because if you set appropriate boundaries ahead of time, it will help you keep from getting overwhelmed. So be realistic. And I know that is really hard for individuals with ADHD because time management is difficult. So it may be difficult for you to be realistic when you're planning, but really keep that in mind. Be realistic about what you can and cannot commit to. And I put this in bold for you. It is okay to say no. It's okay. I know that many of you have a hard time saying no, but it's okay. And if you have to say no to extra events or requests that don't align with your priorities, remember we talked about that master list and crossing some things off? It's okay. You can do that. Communicate your boundaries clearly and kindly with others. So if someone asks you to come to their holiday party or just a family gathering or an event, say, yes, we would love to come. Thank you for the invitation, but we're going to have to leave by 8 o'clock. And then make a note to yourself so you remember we're going to leave at 8 o'clock and set that on your timer. Make certain you set your timer, 8 o'clock, we're done. So be realistic and set those boundaries and do everything you can to stick to them. And then build in buffer time to recharge. That means in between events or commitments, make certain you have a downtime. Make sure you have time to just relax and regroup and recharge in between all of the events. Remember, boundaries aren't about keeping others out. They're about protecting your energy and your mental well-being. This is both for you and your child, or you and your partner, because it's really important you keep that in mind. If you are focused on boundaries and protecting your energy and mental well-being, all of the other steps or all of those other challenges we talked about will be so much easier. So, what did you write down so far? What are some of the top 5? Maybe you wrote down 2 things that you're going to take away from today that you can implement over the holiday season. Breaking tasks into tiny bite-sized pieces. Are you going to do that? or plan ahead for family dynamics. When we were talking about that, you may have thought about a family dynamic. You really need to come up with a plan on how you're going to navigate that. Setting boundaries. Do you have a new perspective on how to set boundaries and the fact that you can't say no to things? Use the stop method or the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 grounding exercise that we talked about. Make certain that you take short, intentional self care moments. Have low key family night. Have realistic expectations for yourself in the holidays. What have you written down? So, what is your takeaway? What are you going to incorporate? Just take a moment to think about that. And as we're thinking about the strategies, I always like to provide tips and strategies that you can incorporate to make your life easier. But then we also have to keep in mind it's important that we simultaneously develop skills because sometimes you might have a strategy you really think is going to work, like the to do list. I'm going to start today with a to do list. And then for some reason, at the end of the day, you wrote a beautiful to do list, but at the end of the day, you don't have anything crossed out on that to do list because we need to simultaneously develop skills. That's important to keep in mind. How can we take steps to improve executive function for the entire year so that all of these tips and strategies we have make sense for us? They work for us, right? Because if we think about emotion regulation, we did talk about some strategies you can use to improve emotion regulation during this time of year. But if you truly think about emotion regulation, and if you want to help yourself or your child improve emotion regulation, there are foundational skills we need to improve in order to have strong emotion regulation. First of all, you have to be able to pay attention to the entire situation. You need to be able to process all of the information. You have to control your impulsivity so that you're not impulsively responding with just the first emotion that comes to mind. We also have to work on mindfulness so that you're able to stay in the present moment and you don't allow that internal chatter or that internal dialogue to derail you. We also have to improve memory so that you're able to draw on prior experiences and really evaluate what the best, most appropriate response is. So when you think about emotion regulation, the stop method is great, but we need to develop those skills so that we can have strong emotion regulation on a day to day basis. We have to work on attention, impulse control, processing speed, mindfulness, memory, and all of those skills are what we can work on in your customized play attention program. Now, if you look at the woman on screen, you see she has the body wave armband on. And if you're not familiar, this is our body wave armband. On the back, there are 3 sensors. And when I slide that armband on my arm, those sensors monitor my brain activity that tells us how attentive I am. And then that information is given over to the computer where I'm allowed to control all of the cognitive exercises like tension stamina, impulse control, task completion, working memory. All of those exercises that are in my plan, I activate them with my attentive state. They're all brain enabled. As long as I'm paying attention, I can work on that cognitive skill. If I'm distracted, then the activity will stop or the character will go in the wrong direction. And I have to focus back in order to continue. And that is really important in the learning process. So if you have not yet looked into play attention, I know many of you here today are already enrolled in play attention and you're using play attention to improve executive function for the year round. But executive function is critical to the day-to-day success. And if we can improve all of these foundational skills and strengthen executive function, your strategies, all of the tips and strategies that we put into place can actually be beneficial. You can maximize all of those tips and strategies that you have in your toolbox. And that's what play attention does. It teaches the foundational skills to improve executive function. And now is a great time to start. During the holidays, we can get your program started and we can customize a plan for each family member. It is very rare that we only work with one family member. We typically work with at least one parent, at least one child, if not the entire family. But there are a few next steps that you can take if you want a little bit more information. One, if you want to know about the specific skills that would be perfect for your play attention program, we do have an online ADHD test. And when you go through that, you can take that test for yourself or your clients or your child. And at the end, you receive a full report that recommends the different cognitive skills you address within your program. So that will give you some clarity on some of the areas that you're struggling with and what we can address within a play attention plan. Also, you may want to consider a one-on-one consultation. During that one-on-one consultation, we'll talk about your specific needs and then demonstrate the program to you so you get a firsthand look on what your play attention program would look like. Or if you don't want that one-on-one consultation, we do have a webinar coming up, which will take you from the very beginning, assessing your needs, all the way through your actual program. I really do appreciate your time today. I do hope that I sparked some new ideas for you, some things that you're going to walk away with. Like we said, I hope you had maybe 2 takeaways from today, 2 new strategies you're going to incorporate into your holiday season to make things a little bit smoother and a lot more stress-free. And also, remember that we're here to help you along the way. Thanks so much, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful afternoon, and I hope you have a fantastic holiday. Take care, everyone.